we discussed yesterday inflammatory response. We discussed inflammation in response to microbe-associated molecular patterns, or we also call that as pathogen-associated molecular patterns. So when we get an infection is caused due to microbes or pathogens. So when a pathogen or microbe enters into our body, it is eaten by phagocytic cells. It is cell surface antigens known as pathogen-associated molecular pattern or microbe-associated molecular pattern right? It is taken by the phagocytic cells, and phagocytic cells, they present it to mast cells, and mast cells secrete histamine, heparin, prostaglandins, and leukotrienes, and they cause inflammation. I told you yesterday how histamine causes inflammation. So histamine first causes local dilation of blood vessels, then plasma leaks out from post-capillary networks. Plasma accumulates in the body tissue, that causes the swelling. Then histamine generates chemotaxis, attracting the phagocytic cells, and phagocytic cells come to the site of infection, and they search for the pathogens to kill them. And plasma tries to neutralize the toxins of the pathogen if they have released any, right? So this was the inflammatory response in response to infection. Sometimes we get our tissues, body tissues, get damaged without infection. You are playing cricket, you get hit by a ball on your forehead. Skin is not cut, but we develop a swelling at the forehead. When we are playing cricket, sometimes we get hit by the ball on the forehead, although the skin is not cut, but still a swelling develops. So how that swelling develops? That swelling is inflammatory response. So when the skin is not cut, pathogen has not entered into the body, still we develop inflammation. How that inflammation is developed? So that inflammation is developed by local damage to the body cells. So some of the tissue cells get ruptured. Some of the tissue cells get ruptured due to impact. So when we are hit by something, although our skin is not cut, but still we develop inflammation. So when we are hit by something, that impact destroys, that impact ruptures some of the tissue cells. And those damaged tissue cells, those ruptured cells, they release some cytoplasmic protein. They release some cytoplasmic proteins. These cytoplasmic proteins, they are detected by mast cells. They bind to mast cells. So these cytoplasmic proteins, which are released by ruptured cells, we call as damage-associated molecular patterns. So these cytoplasmic proteins, which are released by ruptured cells, we call them as damage-associated molecular patterns. So these damage-associated molecular patterns, these proteins, they bind to mast cells, and mast cells get stimulated. They release histamine, they release heparin, they release prostaglandins, they release leukotrienes, and they cause inflammation. So this explains how inflammation is produced. When we are hit by something, although our skin is not cut. So when we are hit by anything, our skin is not cut, but still we develop inflammation. So how that inflammation develops? So due to impact, some of the tissue cells, they get ruptured. Those ruptured cells, they release some proteins in the blood. Those proteins are known as damage-associated molecular patterns. So damaged cells release some proteins. So we call those proteins which are released by damaged cells, we call them as damage-associated molecular patterns. These damage-associated molecular patterns, they bind to mast cells. When they bind to mast cells get stimulated, and they release histamine, heparin, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and these chemical substances, they cause the inflammation. So this is inflammatory response developed on on injury, when we are hit by something, right? So this inflammatory response, it is also a protective response, right? It also attracts the phagocytic cells towards the site of impact. Sometimes due to impact, our skin may get ruptured, and due to rupturing of the skin, some pathogens may have entered into the body. So for that reason, all the phagocytic cells are attracted towards the site of injury. So those phagocytic cells, they try to locate the pathogen and kill the pathogen. Plasma leaks out so that if any pathogen has released some toxin, that toxin can be diluted, right? So in this way, this inflammatory response again serves as a defensive mechanism. It also again serves as a defensive response. But when our inflammation occurs in our body tissues, we are immediately advised to apply cold packs. Why we then apply cold packs? To minimize the inflammation. Excessive inflammation, it causes immobility. It doesn't allow that body organ to function normally. So to minimize this inflammation, to regain the functionality of that body organ, we apply cold packs. Cold packs, they contract blood vessels, reducing the blood flow. They do not allow plasma to leak out, so that minimizes the inflammation. So whenever you develop any inflammation, you are advised to apply cold packs. Why? Because if the tissue is inflamed, you will not be able to perform movements, right? This body organ cannot work. In order to regain the movement, in order to make the body organ to function again, we apply cold packs, we apply anti-inflammatory substances. So they contract the blood vessels, minimizing the blood flow towards that area, subsiding the redness, subsiding the pain, and subsiding the leakage of plasma, so that this body organ may work again normally, right? So inflammatory response is a defensive response. Sometimes inflammation is also produced when allergens enter into our body. If we suffer from any allergy, we may also experience their inflammation. So how that inflammatory response is developed in response to an allergy, we will discuss that now. Inflammatory response in case of allergy. So when an allergen, suppose this is the allergen, when it enters into our body, this allergen, it binds to antigen presenting cells. In the body, we have got antigen presenting cells. These antigen presenting cells, they are phagocytic cells or they are dendritic cells, right? So this allergen, it binds to antigen presenting cell, a phagocytic cell or a dendritic cell. It binds to them. Allergen binds to an antigen presenting cell. These antigen presenting cells, they present this allergen to basophils. Sorry, they present them to B cells, B lymphocytes. They present them to B lymphocytes. These B lymphocytes, as they receive the allergen, they immediately stimulate. B lymphocytes stimulate T helper cells. They stimulate helper T cells. And B lymphocytes also form plasma cells. They change into plasma cells. B lymphocytes change into plasma cells. B lymphocytes divide and they form plasma cells. Then helper T cells also stimulate the plasma cells. helper T cells also stimulate the plasma cells to form antibody known as immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin E, sorry, known as immunoglobulin E. So when this immunoglobulin E is formed, this immunoglobulin E antibody, it binds to mast cell. It binds to mast cell. This is immunoglobulin E antibody. This immunoglobulin E antibody, it binds to mast cell. It binds to mast cell. This is a mast cell. And this mast cell, it releases histamine. It releases histamine. It releases prostaglandins. It releases leukotrienes. And these substances, they produce the inflammation. They produce the inflammation. So in case of allergy, whenever an allergen, so what is an allergen? Allergen may be any substance which is normal for most of the people. But this substance becomes harmful only for certain people of the population. You know, most of the people can eat egg white. But if I take egg white, this egg white, in case of me, it acts as an allergen. I immediately suffer from allergic reaction. So for me, egg white is an allergen. For most of the people, this egg white is a good source of proteins. They easily take it. They do not suffer from any allergy. So allergen can be any substance which is normal for majority of the people. But for some people, this acts as an antigen. Our immune system recognizes it as an antigen and generates a response against it. So that substance is known as an allergen, right? So it can be any food substance, it can be any medicine, it can be any metal which we wear, gold, silver, copper, right? It can be any cloth, for example, silk clothes, right? It can be any exercise. So most of the substances which make our immune system, those substances which make our immune system to react against it in an exaggerated manner, those substances we call them as allergens, right? So when an allergen enters into our body, this allergen binds to our APCs, antigen presenting cells. Most of our antigen presenting cells are phagocytes, phagocytic cells, and there is a special class of antigen presenting cells known as dendritic cells. So it binds to dendritic cells and phagocytic cells, which we generally call as APCs, antigen presenting cells. These cells, they present this antigen, they present this allergen to B lymphocytes. APCs take this allergen and present them to B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes immediately get stimulated and they change into plasma cells. B cells divide, B lymphocytes divide, and they change into plasma cells. And B lymphocytes also stimulate helper T cells. And helper T cells, they release cytokines, a group of proteins, which also stimulate plasma cells. So B lymphocytes, they themselves change into plasma cells, and helper T cells, they stimulate the plasma cells to form antibodies. Plasma cells are stimulated to form a special type of antibody. We have different types of antibodies in our blood, right? But this plasma cell, it is stimulated to form a special type of antibody. Which type of antibody is formed? It forms immunoglobulin E, which is a characteristic feature of allergic reaction. When any person is suffering from a disorder and doctor is not sure whether he is having allergy or something, then he asks the person to get checked for this immunoglobulin E. If immunoglobulin E is present in the bloodstream, that indicates the person is suffering from allergy, right? So plasma cells, they produce antibody immunoglobulin E, and this immunoglobulin E, it binds to mast cells. As immunoglobulin E binds to mast cells get stimulated, they release histamine, prostaglandins, and leukotrienes, and they cause the inflammation. They cause the inflammation, as we discussed, right? But sometimes a person is for second time exposed to the same allergen. So we call that as second exposure. We call that as second exposure. This second exposure, it is very severe. Sometimes a person is again exposed to the same allergen. That is known as second exposure. When a person is for the second time exposed to the same allergen, this allergen now directly binds to mast cell antibody complex. Now allergen directly binds to immunoglobulin E on mast cells. Now second time allergen directly binds to immunoglobulin E on the mast cells. And these mast cells, they are hyperstimulated. They produce histamine, prostaglandins, leukotrienes in large quantities, and they develop a severe response. They develop a severe inflammatory response, and this severe inflammatory response, it may prove fatal. It may become anaphylactic shock, right? It may develop an anaphylactic shock when the whole body of the person suffers from this inflammation, and this can prove fatal. This can prove fatal, and this may sometimes kill the person, right? So first exposure to allergen is mild. That doesn't generate a severe response. When a person is for the first time exposed to an allergen, he may develop allergy, but that allergy will be mild. There will be no severe symptoms. But if the same person is again exposed to the same allergen, that we call as second exposure. At that time, immunoglobulin E is already bound to mast cells, and the allergen directly now binds to immunoglobulin E, and that hyperstimulates the mast cells. Mast cells release histamine, prostaglandins, leukotrienes in very large quantities, and they develop a very severe allergic response. And we call that as anaphylactic shock. And that anaphylactic shock sometimes proves fatal, and the person may die because of that anaphylactic shock if not treated immediately, right? So if anyone is suffering from allergic reaction, he should be immediately taken to the doctor or hospital where anti-allergic drug must be administered to minimize the effect of this allergic reaction. Uh, First exposure is less severe, and second exposure to the same allergen is very severe. It may directly lead a person into anaphylactic shock, and the person may get killed, right? So for that purpose, if you know that you are allergic to something, you should not take it again. If you sometimes experience allergy to something, for the first time the allergic reaction, it will not be severe. But if you consume the same thing again, at that time the allergic reaction may be very severe, and that may lead to an anaphylactic shock. So this is inflammatory response in case of allergy. So allergen for the first time binds to APCs, then APCs present into B lymphocytes, then B lymphocytes change into plasma cells. B lymphocytes also help stimulate helper T cells. Helper T cells also stimulate plasma cells to produce antibody. A special class of antibodies is produced that is known as immunoglobulin E. Then this immunoglobulin E binds to mast cell. Mast cell releases histamine, but that reaction is not very severe. That is a less severe reaction. But if the second exposure occurs, during the second exposure, the allergen directly binds to antibody mast cell complex. The allergen on second exposure directly binds to mast cell antibody complex. And mast cells release histamine, prostaglandins, and leukotrienes in very large quantities. And the second exposure is very severe, and it may lead a person into anaphylactic shock, because of which the person may die. So it is advised that if you know that I am allergic to this substance, don't consume it again. Avoid that substance so that second exposure may not prove fatal. So that is about the inflammatory response. So this inflammatory response, it is basically a defensive response. But when it occurs very severely, at that time it may prove fatal. At that time, immediately anti-inflammatory, anti-allergic drugs must be administered. So that is all about the inflammatory response. After inflammatory response, now we are going to discuss another component of innate or non-specific immunity. That is lysozyme. Innate or non-specific immunity is provided by another enzyme that is known as lysozyme. This lysozyme is naturally secreted. It is naturally present in our saliva and tears. It is even present in gastric juice. Gastric juice. This lysozyme, it is known as natural antibiotic. It is known as natural antibiotic. So it kills bacteria. It kills bacteria. You know, our eyes are directly in contact with the environment. So there are every apprehensions that bacteria may enter into our eyeballs. Our mouth remains open while talking. There is apprehension that bacteria may enter into our mouth or nose because they are in direct contact with the environment, right? So these organs of the body, which are in direct contact with the surrounding environment, they are naturally protected by presence of lysozyme in tears and in saliva. So our eyes, they continuously produce an antibiotic. What is that antibiotic? Lysozyme. It is naturally present in our tears. Our mouth is continually secreting saliva. In this saliva, we have got this lysozyme. Our alimentary canal secretes gastric juice. In that gastric juice, we also have got lysozyme. So this lysozyme, it kills the bacteria. How it kills the bacteria, you might be knowing. It disrupts the formation of those polysaccharide chains. You know, bacterial cell wall is formed of peptidoglycan. In that peptidoglycan cell wall, there are polysaccharide chains linked by short tetrapeptides. Those polysaccharides, they are linked by glycosidic bonds. This lysozyme, it disrupts, it breaks glycosidic bonds. Glycosidic bonds of polysaccharide chains. Polysaccharide chains. So when glycosidic bonds of polysaccharide chains are broken, the cell wall is shattered. So bacterial cell wall is broken and the bacteria get killed. So this antibiotic, it is naturally present in our saliva and tears and our alimentary canal secretions. So it protects us from the entry of bacteria. It protects us from the entry of pathogens, right? So this also provides us immunity. This also provides us immunity. And it is a component of innate or non-specific immunity, right? So that is all about innate or non-specific immunity. Now, after this, we are going to discuss about adaptive or specific immunity. So far we were discussing innate or non-specific immunity. As you must be now knowing that this innate or non-specific immunity, it is provided to us by skin, it is provided to us by mucosa, it is provided to us by this skin mucosa, it is provided to us by these phagocytes, it is provided to us by inflammatory response, it is provided to us by lysozyme, right? So these were the components of innate or non-specific immunity. Now we will discuss adaptive or specific immunity. Are you listening to me? Adaptive or specific. So why we call it as adaptive or specific? Because this component of our immune system, it adapts itself against different types of pathogens. Innate or non-specific immunity, it was similar for any type of pathogen. But this adaptive or specific immunity, it works differently for different types of pathogens. For example, we are suffering from diarrhea. Most of the diarrhea is caused by Vibrio cholerae. We are suffering from cholera, in which diarrhea is one symptom. A person is suffering from cholera. Cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae. This immune system will produce specific antibodies and defensive cells against Vibrio cholerae. If the same person then gets infected by pneumonia, Diplococcus pneumoniae, those antibodies and defensive cells which were formed against Vibrio cholerae, they will not work against Diplococcus pneumoniae. So it will form separate antibodies and defensive cells against Diplococcus pneumoniae. Then if another bacterium invades the body, suppose tuberculosis bacterium, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. For Mycobacterium tuberculosis, it will form again a specific type of antibodies and defensive cells. They will only work against Mycobacterium tuberculosis. They will only work against tuberculosis. They will not work against pneumonia or cholera, right? So it generates a specific response against a specific pathogen. So it adapts itself against a specific pathogen. That is why we call it as adaptive or specific immunity. That is why we call it as adaptive or specific immunity. So it recognizes different types of pathogens and it generates separate responses for those different types of pathogens. It can identify a virus. For a virus, it may generate a separate response. For a bacterium, it may generate a separate response. For a protozoan parasite, it will generate separate response, right? So it identifies the different types of pathogens and it adapts to those pathogens. That is why we call it as adaptive immunity. So we call it specific immunity because it develops a specific type of antibodies and specific type of defensive cells against a specific type of pathogen. This adaptive or specific immunity, it shows some properties. It has got 4 distinguishing properties. What are its 4 distinguishing properties? Number first, this immunity only works. It only works in presence of pathogen. In presence of pathogen or disease-causing organism. Adaptive or specific immunity, it is only developed when there is presence of pathogen or disease-causing organism in the body. If pathogen is not present in the body, this immunity is not developed. This immunity is not developed. So that is its first distinguishing property. It only works in presence of pathogen, right? Number second property, it generates a specific response against a specific pathogen. So it shows specificity. It shows specificity. It recognizes, it can differentiate between different types of pathogens, right? As I told you just now. It displays memory. It displays memory. Once a pathogen has entered into the body, adaptive or specific immunity recognizes it, develops a response against it, then it keeps a record of the pathogen. So that if the pathogen enters next time into the body, it is immediately identified and destroyed, right? So it keeps a record with it. So it has a memory. It has a memory. Although this memory, it remains there for varying periods of time. There are some diseases, some pathogens for which there is lifelong immunity. The memory cells, they remain circulating in the blood for lifelong period. There are some pathogens for which the memory remains only for 6 months, 3 months. For example, in case of tetanus, these memory cells, they remain circulating in blood just a period of 3 months, right? So it displays memory. Those memory cells, they keep the record of the pathogen so that if the pathogen again enters into the body, the pathogen is immediately recognized by these memory cells and they react and destroy. They ensure that the pathogen is destroyed before it multiplies. The fourth distinguishing property of this system is that it seldom attacks. It seldom attacks own body components. Own body components. Generally, it doesn't attack our own body organs, but sometimes it goes berserk. Something wrong happens with this immune system. At that time, it starts attacking our own body organs. For example, you might have heard about the disease rheumatoid heart, rheumatic heart. In that, our own antibodies, they recognize our heart valves as pathogen and start destroying it. You might have heard about rheumatoid arthritis. In that condition, our own antibodies, they recognize synovial membrane as a pathogen, as an antigen, and they start destroying the synovial membrane of joint, causing the inflammation, swelling, and stiffness of the joint. So those disorders, they are known as autoimmune disorders. Autoimmune disorder. So sometimes this immunity, sometimes adaptive or spastic immunity, it may cause autoimmune disorders. It may cause autoimmune disorders. But this happens only sometimes. Usually it doesn't attack its own body components. But sometimes when something goes wrong, at that time, adaptive or spastic immunity, its cells, its antibodies, they may attack its own body components. So these are the 4 distinguishing properties of adaptive or spastic immunity. We will discuss further about it, inshallah, in next lecture. This time we are running out of time. So this is section for today. Thank you for being with me. I am ending this meeting.